Hi, today we will look into the concept of the single shoe brake. The friction between the block and the brake drum causes a tangential braking force to act on the brake drum, which retards the rotation of the brake drum. This is the working principle of the single shoe brake, which is also called as single block brake. The application of the single shoe brake is railway trains. In this figure you can see the tracks. On the track there is the wheel, and in front of the wheel you can see the single shoe brake. Each wheel has each single shoe brake. In this figure you can see that the shoes are close to the drum, and with the shoes there is a block, and to the block the lever is connected. The shoes are pressed on the drum, and due to the friction between the shoes and the drum, the motion of the drum retards. Another example of the shoe brake is tram cars. In this figure you can see the picture of the tram car. You can also see here that on the roads you can't see the track, and the tracks are within the roads. You can see that the wheels are connected with the shoes, and to the shoes there is block and lever. Now the shoes stops the drum or the wheel when the lever is operated. Let us go to the next example, that is electric overhead traveling crane. So in the crane also there is a drum onto which the brakes are there. The other application is hoisting mechanisms. Brakes are also used in Charpy impact test and isoid impact test. Now we know that single shoe brakes are used in bicycles as well as tricycles. This is one of the figure of a bicycle, and you can see the shoes, and the shoes comes in contact with the rim of the cycle wheel, and when the shoes are pressed against the rim of the wheel, the braking action takes place. Let us see what are the advantages of the single shoe brake. The main advantage is that it applies uniform pressure over drum due to small area of contact between the shoe and the drum. So the wear on the shoe would be uniform. A longer life of the shoe can be achieved. So this is one of the advantages of using single shoe brake. There are some disadvantages as well. The tendency of the brake drum shaft to bend under the action of normal reaction. So the shaft or the drum can bend. The remedy is we use two symmetrical blocks at the opposite sides of the brake drum. So if you have single shoe brake, there is a tendency for the shaft to bend. So to reduce that tendency, two shoe brakes can be done on either side of the drum, so the tendency of bending of the shaft is reduced. Let us look into the assumptions in the single shoe or the block brake. The block is rigidly attached to the lever. That is the first assumption. The second assumption is the angle of contact between the block and the brake drum is less than 45 degree. Hence, uniform pressure distribution between the block and the brake drum can be achieved. It is therefore reasonable to assume that the normal reaction and the friction force are concentrated at the midpoint of the shoe. But there is a case 4 in this type of particular problem where this assumption is not valid. So at that particular point we will look into the case 4 in detail. Let us look into some classifications of single shoe brake. The two major classifications are short shoe brake and long shoe brake. Now the point is, in the short shoe brake, theta is less than 45 degree. In long shoe brake, theta is greater than 45 degree. In short shoe brake, the block is fixed or the shoes are fixed. In long shoe brake, the block is pivoted. Now in the theta less than 45 degree, there are three cases and arrangements of the lever. Case 1 is one arrangement where it can be clockwise and anti-clockwise, and formulas change when it is clockwise and formulas change when it is anti-clockwise. Same is the case with case 2 and case 3. So in total you can say there can be 6 formulas. For case 1 there is 2 formula, for case 2 there is 2 formula, and for case 3 also there are 2 formulas. Therefore there are 6 cases that can arise from this particular short shoe brake. Similarly, there can be 6 cases with respect to the long shoe brake as well. But as I told you that here the block or the shoe is pivoted to the lever, whereas for the short shoe brake the shoe is fixed to the lever. Let us see some important parts of the shoe brake. Shaft of the brake drum with key, brake drum, block with friction lining and lever. So these are some of the important parts of the single shoe brake. Let us look into the terminology of the short shoe brake. Mu is equal to coefficient of friction. A and B are brake lever dimensions. E dash is the location of the hinge pin. That is, E dash is the distance between the fulcrum O and the line of action of force. F is the friction force. Mt is the braking torque. Capital P is the force applied on the lever. Capital D is the diameter of the brake drum. R is equal to D by 2, that is the radius of the brake drum. O is the fulcrum. N is the normal reaction between the drum and the shoe. Mu N is equal to F, that is the friction force. Some other terminologies of the short shoe brake are: W is the width of the block. W can be 1/4 to 1/2 times D. So this particular relation is obtained from V.B. Bhandari. L is the length of the block. Theta is block angle. Small p is the permissible pressure between the block and the brake drum. In this figure of the single shoe brake, we can observe that the drum is shown in the blue color and it is rotating in the clockwise direction. It can be also observed that the friction force F is in the direction of the same of that of the drum. If the drum was rotating in anti-clockwise direction, then F would be in opposite direction. The drum is generally made of cast iron or steel. Here we can see angle theta. Now theta is the block angle and it is a subtended angle between the blocks. Now we can see that the force F is acting exactly at the midpoint of the block, that is the point Z. It can be noted that this assumption is fairly accurate when the angle of lap theta is less than 45 degree. It is based on the assumption that the pressure intensity is uniform between the shoe and the drum. The brown color here is the lever, and the lever has a fulcrum at one side and is acted upon a force that is called as capital P. Now the fulcrum is called as point O. Here we have B, and B is the distance between the fulcrum and the center of the drum, and small a is the distance between fulcrum and the actuating force, that is P. Now the fulcrum is located below the friction force, hence the distance between the fulcrum and the friction force is shown as E dash. You can observe that this figure is not shown in the PSG design data book. Hence, we will be also discussing the figure that is drawn in design data book, which is quite similar to the same figure. The block brake consists of a simple block and it is pressed against the rotating drum by means of the lever. The friction between the block and the brake drum causes a retardation of the drum. The angle of contact between the block and the brake drum is usually small. When it is less than 45 degree, the intensity of the pressure between the block and the brake drum is uniform. It can be also observed that the block is rigidly connected to the lever. Let us look into the free body diagram of the brake drum. In this, we'll start with the lower portion. In this particular figure, we can see there is a lever that is of the brown color, and the lever is rigidly and firmly connected to the block, and the block consists of this green color part and the purple color part. The purple color part is the friction lining. Now the block, as I said, is connected very rigidly with the lever. So when the lever is pushed in the upward direction, the block also moves in the upward direction, and then the block comes in contact with the drum and and the drum retards its motion and comes to zero motion where the velocity is zero. Now when the P force is applied on the lever, you can see at the same time a normal reaction N acts in the downward direction, and hence we know that when a force is applied, a reaction force will act. The reaction force will also be generated on the brake drum, as you can see here, a vertical upward reaction force called N. So we have N acting onto the block and N acting over to the drum. Now we can see that the drum is rotating in clockwise direction, and when the block comes in contact with the drum slowly, the motion of the drum retards. Now when the drum is rotating clockwise direction, a frictional force F is acting on the drum due to the block, and F is called as mu n. So a frictional force acts in the direction opposite to that of the rotation of the drum. Similarly, a force F is acting in opposite direction because of the force, that is friction force, that developed on the brake drum. So those both of them get cancelled. Now we have seen F on the block and F on the drum. Now we know that the lever has a hinge at point O, and the hinge, or it is also called as fulcrum, has hinge reactions Rx and Ry, and these are the reactions at the hinge point O. We know that the distance between the hinge and the frictional force E dash is something what we use for calculation. Now when we try to analyze the brake drum, we will be considering this lower portion with the block and the lever for analysis. So we will consider F and N for calculations. You know F is equal to mu n. When we are trying to find out braking torque MT, that is equal to F into R, and when substitute F, we get MT is equal to mu into N into R. The dimensions of the block is determined by the following expression: N is equal to P into L into W, where P is the permissible pressure between the block and the brake drum, L is the length of the block, W is the width of the block, and R is the radius of the brake drum. By using this equation, we can find out the different parameters connected with the block. Now let us try to find out the reaction forces Rx and Ry. Now if you take the equilibrium condition with respect to vertical and horizontal direction with respect to the lever and the block, you can see Rx, that is in the horizontal direction, Rx is equal to mu n, that is acting along the F, and Ry is equal to N, that is acting downwards, minus P, that is acting upwards. By using the equilibrium in vertical horizontal direction, you can find what is Rx and Ry. Now while taking the movement with respect to the point O, when the drum is rotating in the clockwise direction, we can say that with respect to O, P into A minus N into B plus mu N into E dash is equal to 0. So we get this equation by taking moments, and by rearranging we get P is equal to B minus mu E dash upon A multiplied by N. The short shoe brake can be again further classified in three cases as we have seen earlier. Let us see what are these three cases. In case 1, the line of action of F passing through the fulcrum. In case 2, the line of action of F passing through a distance E dash below the fulcrum, and it can be anti-clockwise, and case 2 can be clockwise as well. In case 3, line of action of force F passing at a distance E dash above the fulcrum with respect to anti-clockwise, and this can be in clockwise direction as well. So there are three cases in clockwise and in anti-clockwise direction. Now in case 2, you can see that I have written point 1, point 2 and point 3. Point 1 says if B is greater than mu E dash, the particular point 1 is called as partially self-energizing brake. If B is equal to mu E dash, it is called self-locking brake. If B is less than mu E dash, then it is uncontrolled braking and grabbing. In the coming slides, we will try to understand the point 1, point 2 and point 3. This particular figure is given in the PSG design data book, page number 7.97. In this figure, the lever and the block are located above the drum, and you can see the drum is rotating in the anti-clockwise direction, and the F is moving or is in the direction of negative x-axis. We can change this scenario. If the drum is rotating in the clockwise direction, in that case F would be acting along the positive x-axis, It can be also observed in this figure that the frictional force F is in line with the fulcrum O. The F and the O are in the same line. So this is the figure that is shown in the design data book. Now it can happen that the F is passing little above or little below the fulcrum. According to that, case 2 and the case 3 can be decided. Let us look into the case 1. In the case 1 in the design data book, page number 7.97, the fulcrum and the F are in the same line. So line of action of F passing through the fulcrum. We can calculate the force F and the braking torque MT by using these formulas that are given in the design data book. From this formula we can rearrange and try to find out capital P, that is the force applied on the lever. We also know that F is equal to mu n. So when you put F is equal to mu n in this formula, the P can be rearranged in this manner. In the case 2, you can observe that line of action of F passing at the distance E below the fulcrum. In this particular case, we have to observe that whether it is rotating clockwise direction or anti-clockwise direction, because formulas are available both for clockwise direction and anti-clockwise direction. In the previous particular set, you see that since the F is passing through the fulcrum, it's not important whether it is moving anti-clockwise or clockwise, because the formulas will remain same in case 1. But in case 2, because of the eccentricity E dash, there would be a change in formula, so we have to observe in which direction the drum is rotating. And in this case, F is P multiplied by A upon B by mu minus E dash, and the braking torque formula is given. We multiply the force multiplied by D by 2. In concluding case 2, we can observe that F is passing below the fulcrum. That means the F is below the fulcrum point O, and the case 2 is about anti-clockwise direction. Let us analyze this particular figure in more detail. We know the formula F is equal to P into A upon B upon U minus E dash, and this equation is available in PHG 7.97. We will substitute F is equal to mu n in the above formula and we'll get the following equation. Rearranging it in terms of P, we'll get it as B minus mu E dash into N upon A. It's a very important formula, and at this point we'll discuss point 1, point 2 and point 3. Considering this formula where P stands for the load acting on the lever, in point 1 B is greater than mu into E dash. In this condition, partially self-energizing brake is achieved. The friction force F helps in applying the brake, and this is a desirable condition. In point 2, B is equal to mu E dash. In this condition, self-locking of the brake is done, and this is an undesirable condition. In point 3, B is less than mu E dash. In this condition, uncontrolled braking and grabbing is done, and therefore it is undesirable condition. In case 2, in the clockwise direction, line of action of F passing at a distance E dash below the fulcrum. So you can see that it is a clockwise direction and the F passing below the fulcrum, and the formulas are given in PHG 7.97. So we don't need to remember the formula. But the point here to understand is these formulas can be only used for clockwise direction and when the condition F passing below the fulcrum is satisfied. Let us look into the case 3 condition. In case 3 condition, anti-clockwise direction, when we consider line of action of F passing at a distance E dash above the fulcrum. So by looking into the figure, you will observe that the F is passing above the fulcrum, and the distance between the fulcrum and the line of action of F is given by E dash, and hence these are the formulas for the case 3 and it is anti-clockwise direction. We can also observe that here the F is acting towards the negative x-axis and F passing above the fulcrum satisfied. In the case 3 in clockwise direction, we can observe that line of action of F passing at a distance E dash above the fulcrum. So in this case you can see the line of action of force, that is F, is above the fulcrum, and the distance between the fulcrum and the line of action is E dash. So the formulas again are given in the page number 7.97. So we did not remember it. In short shoe brake and long shoe brake, let us compare. In short shoe brake, theta is less than 45 degree and it uses a fixed shoe. In long shoe brake, theta is greater than 45 degree and it uses a pivoted shoe. Now you can see this block is connected with the lever and the connection is quite rigid. But in this case the block is quite huge and is pivoted to the lever, and this is the reason why it is called as long shoe brake. The angle between them is less than 45 degree in case of short shoe brake, and here the angle is quite more and it can be even 90 degree. Both of them are rotating in the anticlockwise direction and F is passing above the fulcrum. We can see that there are 3 cases in the short shoe brake. Similarly, there are 3 cases for long shoe brake also, where F is passing above the fulcrum and also F is passing below the fulcrum. 3 cases exist for both the cases. When it is less than 45 degree, the intensity of pressure between the block and the brake drum is uniform. That's why it is called as short shoe brake. When the angle is more than 45 degree, the intensity of pressure is not uniform. Therefore, we use a pivoted shoe so that there is uniform wear, and hence the concept of long shoe brake comes in picture. Let us look in some of the terminologies of the pivoted shoe, or we also call it as case 4 for normal pressure distribution. Small p is the normal pressure on the shoe at the angle. P max is maximum pressure on the shoe. W is the face width of the brake drum. L is the distance from the drum center to the line of action of force. Small r is the radius of the drum. Capital MT is braking torque. Phi by 2 is the semi-block angle. Alpha is an element of friction lining located at the angle and subtending an angle d alpha. Now we will look into the diagram of the long shoe brake. Now, as I told you, there are 3 cases in the long shoe brake. We can also see that in this figure the fulcrum and the F, that is line of action of force, is passing through the same line. Here the block is pivoted to the lever, as you can see at the center, and the lever, as you can see, is applied with a force called P, so that the lever can be pushed onto the drum with the help of the block and the retarding motion can be achieved. The L is the distance between the center of drum and the pivot. To solve this formula and solve the equations, they consider d alpha a small element on the drum which consists of an area of dA and force of dF. d alpha is alpha distance from the vertical, and by solving these equations they are trying to find out what is force and torque required for the braking action. Phi by 2 is the semi-block angle. Let us see the concept of the long shoe brake. When the angle is more than 45 degree, the pivoted shoe is used. The pressure between the shoe surface and the drum is not uniformly distributed in this case. But when theta is greater than 45 degree, the non-uniformity of the pressure must be taken into account. Pivoted shoe is used instead of fixed shoe. This ensures more uniform wear. The pivot is so located that the resultant friction and the normal reactions have no movement about the pivot. If a movement exists, either the leading or the trailing edge of the shoe will wear rapidly. Thus the forces N and the F act at radius L instead of radius R. This increases the friction torque, that is MT is equal to F into L. Hence in this case the braking torque is much more than the braking torque for the short shoe brake. Let us look into the formulas for the long shoe brake. The 2 formulas involved are the friction force and the braking torque. The friction force is the same that of the short shoe brake. It depends upon the position of the fulcrum with respect to the line of action of F, same as case 1, case 2 and case 3. It also depends on the direction of rotation, whether it is clockwise or anti-clockwise. Hence, no separate set of formulas are given for the long shoe brake with respect to the friction force. But we require to calculate what is L, and L can be calculated using this formula. P max can be calculated using this relationship. and N is the normal force which is given by this formula, where phi is given to you and W is the width of the shoe. MT can be calculated as F into L, where F is something what we have seen earlier and L is the distance between the center of the drum and the pivot. Now let us try to compare something about the short shoe brake when theta is 45 degree. This is the orientation what we have seen at the very beginning slides, and this is the figure that is given in the design data book. Both the cases and are rotating in the clockwise direction, and you can also observe that the fulcrum is quite below the friction lining, or it can be said that F is passing above the fulcrum in both the cases. See, you have to understand that even though the orientation changes, the formulas do not change in this case, because the direction of rotation is also same and the F is passing above the fulcrum in both the cases. If the lever is above or below, it doesn't matter, the formula remains the same. Let us draw some conclusions with respect to that. It is important to note that the block and the lever is located with respect to drum. Example, if block and lever is located above the drum, or if block and lever is located below the drum, it's not important in that case, and the formulas don't change due to the location of the block and the lever. The second point to be noted is that the formulas change due to direction of rotation, whether it is rotating clockwise or anti-clockwise. This will decide what formulas you need to take. The formulas change as the fulcrum is placed above or below the F, so which case it belongs to, we have to look carefully. The formulas related to friction force and braking torque for case 1, case 2 and case 3 are available in PSG design data book, both for short shoe brake and for long shoe brake. In the second summary, we can observe that there are two figures in this slide, and in both the figures the drum is rotating in anti-clockwise direction and the force P is acting in the downward direction. In both the figure, that thing is common. You can see that the force F is passing below the fulcrum, and in this case also the force F is passing below the fulcrum. Almost both of them are same, but the positioning of the lever is little different. Here to the left hand side P is acting, in this figure to the right hand side the P is acting, and the fulcrum is the opposite direction of that. But it has to be noted that the force applied on the lever, whether it is on right hand side or left hand side, it doesn't matter. For example, if P is applied to the right side of the drum or P is applied to the left side of the drum, it doesn't matter. The formulas don't change depending upon the side at which the P is active with respect to the drum. In both the cases, the P is acting on the lever in the downward direction, so the block is also acting in the downward direction. At this point we can say we have understood the concept of the single shoe brake.